Well, British monarch King Charles III has called for ties between his country and South Africa to be strengthened. The King addressed a state banquet at Buckingham Palace last night with President Ramaphosa as his guest of honour. Ramaphosa also calling for increased cooperation between the two nations. Our reporter Govan joins us now from London to talk about that banquet. We'll get to those comments in just a moment, Govan. But first, give us a sense of the banquet itself, the kind of displays that were on show at Buckingham Palace.
Good morning, Michelle. Coming to you this morning from the streets of London. Sun isn't up yet, but we are already starting to see people on the move. It was a spectacular display in Buckingham Palace last night. The ballroom itself, which was the venue for the banquet, is the largest room in the palace. It was used because they expected over 170 guests to attend. This is the first state visit that the United Kingdom has held since 2019. Their last guest was the US President Donald Trump, and of course the first guest of the new monarch, King Charles III, is President Cyril Ramaphosa. And South Africa's reception at Buckingham Palace was filled with a number of updates, so to speak. Firstly, they mentioned that the flowers on display were sustainable. That just means that they were picked in season. And then, of course, as to be expected, all the cutlery in the palace that was being used is solid gold. So are all the ornaments. Even the salt and pepper shaker, well, they use English mustard and not necessarily pepper. It's just gold trays, essentially, that were being used. On the walls were also a different variety of displays, including gold ornaments commissioned by the late Queen Victoria that are still on display, and various types of porcelain displays all around the palace. It was a lavish affair. And on the menu, there were a number of items, most of them French. But what I did see there was on the menu was a few artichokes, some butternut soup and roti. I think those are the items we can identify with at home. And then a number of other items that unfortunately couldn't wrap my head around. But there were a lot of different indications that they had pulled out all the stops for this affair by the King of the UK, King Charles III, and the Queen Consort. And then, of course, the entrance as well, ceremonial in its entirety, and the King making a speech which touched on a number of issues. We'll get to a number of some of the points, but I should mention that he started his speech in the traditional South African way, using 6 different South African languages to say hello, which included Molweni, Sawubona, Absheni, and ending with the famous Chivenda greeting Inda. And that, of course, got everyone in the palace banquet venue laughing. He did make a number of jokes about sports as well, but the entire affair was lavish in its entirety, of course. And the paintings, the symphony that was being used there, official royal symphony that was being played by the orchestra, also seemed to be top shelf. And the people that put it on display, the King's spokesperson at Buckingham Palace, said that they tried to up the bar or raise the standard for this banquet to make sure that the King begins his reign by setting a precedent as to what to expect at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, I saw a video on Instagram as well, Govan, as you talk about what was on the menu at the banquet yesterday. There was a dessert that was made in the shape of a protea. Of course, another ode to South Africa and the state visit. So shall we get to the speeches part of that event? What did King Charles III say about the UK's relationship with South Africa?
Well, firstly, he pointed to the complex history that exists between South Africa and Britain, of course, pointing to the fact that his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth II, had been visiting in Cape Town just a year before he was born, and he had always held Cape Town very dear to his own heart, and South Africa in its entirety. Pointed to the important efforts around conservation taking place in South Africa, and saying that, of course, that was one issue that he also has been dedicated to for most of his tenure as the Prince of Wales, and something that he plans to foreground during his reign as the King of the United Kingdom. And King Charles, importantly, having spoken about the need for collaboration in certain sectors, including science and technology, and the skills transfer by universities in South Africa, sending their students to universities here in the United Kingdom, specifically pointing to the successes of the Chevening program, which has brought a number of graduates to the UK, to London, to conduct postgraduate studies. And let's take a look at what the King had to say in this short clip that was prepared.
It is only by working together across our countries and our generations that we will tackle some of the greatest challenges of our times. For instance, our collaboration in science and innovation is literally vital in order to protect our people's health by preparing for future pandemics. Perhaps, above all, we must find and implement practical solutions to the twin existential threats of climate change and biodiversity loss.
That's King Charles III of the UK speaking at that state banquet where he hosted President Cyril Ramaphosa last night at Buckingham Palace. Our president also speaking about the need to strengthen the relationship between the UK and South Africa, revealing that he has spoken at length about investments with the King. And today, of course, he'll be meeting with the UK government. He'll be meeting the British Prime Minister, as well as a number of ministers at Lancaster House, and importantly, a number of business leaders in a business forum where we're expecting to get some details on the kind of agreements they hope to reach here.
Govan Whittle's live just there on the streets of London, just after 6 o'clock there where you are. Thanks very much indeed.